Welcome to Dirshu Daf HaYomi Bahalacha. Today we are continuing in Hilchos Hanhagos Adam Baboker, the way that one should conduct themselves in the morning, which is Siman Gimel. We're going to start with Sif Yud Gimel, and we're going to actually finish the Siman. And then afterwards, we're going to begin Siman Dalid, which is Dini Natilas Yadayim, which is lengthy, which has 23 sifim. We're going to see just the words of the Mechaber, ending before the Haggadah, the Ramah. Now, there are three questions that we're going to be focusing on today. Most of them are going to be Natilas Yadayim questions, which we'll get to shortly in the next Siman. One question is, what is the reason for Natilas Yadayim? We're going to see the Mishnah Berurah discusses two of the main reasons. Can one recite Natilas Yadayim after Shacharis if, let's say, you didn't say the bracha and you finish davening? And the third question regarding Baal Teshaksu, when does Baal Teshaksu not apply? So, again, let's begin with Sif Yud Gimel. Lo yashtin umud. A person should not literally relieve themselves standing. This is actually brought down Malchokas Beis Shammai Beis Hillel in Masechtas Brachos in the third parak. There's a concern of nitzaitzais, that possibly the urine will go back and splash back onto you, and therefore there could be a concern that people will think that you're actually incapable of having a child. And how could it be that this man is married to a woman and they have kids? Must be their mamzerim. So there's a major concern of nitzaitzis. Im lo shiyamad b'makom gavoa, unless you're standing at a higher place, o shiyash l'teich offer tichoyach, if you're urinating into earth, that is not going to cause anything to ricochet or to come back. Perush karkashena batula, it's not virgin ground. El kigayin shel eretz charusha, it's plowed. So that is what a person again should do when it comes to this. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Al ragla v'yomru shehu kor shavcha. Again, people accuse him of that, and therefore they're going to say that perhaps his children are mamzerim, because a kor shavcha is ein moiled. He's sterile. He can't have kids. And he says that if, let's say, for example, you urinate in a place where it's going to not cause this problem, that's not a problem. You can't sit down. You could do other things as well to try to avoid the possibility of splashings of the urine. Okay. Again, the question is, this is something in which we are as noig or concerned with. So again, typically we're not as concerned of people accusing us of being a kar shavcha. Okay, let's continue with Sif Yodal. Yizahir shlo yechayiz ba'ama b'yashtin. The person shouldn't physically hold on to his male member while he urinates. Imlo matar l'mata. If not from the Torah down. It's possible that he may end up causing, by touching the gid, that it may cause hirhur, and because of that, it may end up causing shechva zero vatala. El imkein hu nasoi, if a person is married, and as the Mishnah Berurah uses the expression, you have pas basalo, literally there's bread in the basket, because you do regularly have the opportunity to be intimate with your wife, and therefore you're not going to have the same element of a Yetzer Hara because you have pas basali. It says v'im hi nida ushu b'derech aser. Interestingly enough, that if, let's say, she's a nida, or you or her away, so that becomes a problem because you no longer have pas basalo. He quotes the Ibn Ezra, Mishnah Berurah does, they feel nasoi in mutu haishit yadul amaklal el b'shashehut tzarech l'nekavav. So again, perhaps even someone who's married, we have this stringency as well. Okay. And then the Shulchan Aruch concludes, well, midas chasidus zohar fil hanasoy. Again, midas chasidus is to be careful in general. Let's see, tes vav. Afilu mi she'enu nasoy mutal aseh bebeitzim. Even if someone's not married, he's able to hold on to the testicles. That is not as much of an issue because the Mishnah Berurah says she'en meschamim al yedei kach. It doesn't cause warmth. So you could hold some type of garment which is thick in order to be able to have more control of your male member when you're urinating. Not like a shirt. It's got to be something thicker. The yesh mefakbeflin gam alidei matlas ava mishum doloya din and shiru, because we don't know what is the measurement which will cause chimum, and therefore some people are strict in general. Okay, let's continue with now the next sif, which is sif tazayin. Lo huter l'nasul echos ba'ama el hashtin. We only allow a married person to hold onto the amma only when he's urinating. Avo lischatech loy. So what does that mean? So let's look in the Mishnah Berurah. Lefi shahachichuch, like rubbing, maybe lichimum. V'kal yavu shechva zera. So again, it brings this important element of being strict when it comes to how a person should urinate, that the person should not be holding onto the gid. Final sif. A person does not use the bathroom, and he holds himself in, so that person is actually going to violate l'chayra an Issur D'Oraisa. We'll see if this is in fact an Issur D'Oraisa. About the shaksu, a person should not make themselves literally repulsive. So let's see the Mishnah Berurah. V'masha atzmol katanim armishum bal shaksu. He says even when it comes to katanim, to urination, there's bal shaksu. Mishum shelo yehi akar, because again it could cause a person to go sterile. Fine. Others say you're not oiran bal shaksu by urinating. Gami iser bal shaksu nidchem in kavod abrius. The element of bal shaksu could be pushed off because of showing kavod. So in order to be able to find an appropriate place to find a bathroom, so you could wait a few moments, because for kavod abrius, so that you're doing it in a proper place. It says wipe yourself properly. A person should also afterwards use some type of cleansing agent, some liquid or of sorts, to make sure that that area is completely clean. So we're going to be focusing on the last question, which I mentioned about when does Baal Tashaksu. It's certainly when a person needs to go to the bathroom very badly, and there's no good reason not to. So on this, the Biurim Musafim say as follows. It says, so we said when it comes to urination, you're over possibly not just Baal Tashaksu, but also Shelo Yeh Akar. So he says as follows. Let's say you have to use the bathroom, but not so much. You have some type of a feeling, but it's not like an absolute urge of great necessity. So he quotes, in that case, you're not going to be over Baal Tashaksu. And he says also, quoting She'im Kishemasiach Daito Inu Margish Shesarchan Akevav Inu Ever Lo Mishum Baal Tashaksu Lo Mishum Lo Ye Akar. So if somehow you can divert your attention from it, that it's not so intense that you can't stop thinking about it, but if you can somehow divert your attention, you're doing something else, then all of a sudden you forgot that you had to use the bathroom, so then it's not an issue about the shock. So obviously it shows it's not as significant. Inyan Isser Miras Divrei Torah. Interesting. How about, can you learn Torah? Can you say the Shema, Brachos? So he says, L'misha Hitzach L'kevav. So later on we'll see, Shenoig B'chol Misha Enu Yochel Hamidus Atzmo Ad Parsa. If you can't even go the distance of a parsa, and because of that, you would need to use the bathroom within that time. Even if, let's say, you don't have such a strong desire, but if you would need to use the bathroom within that short frame of time, and you don't, that's Bal Tashaksu. The question is, what if, let's say, a bracha comes in front of you, and you'll be mafsid saying the bracha if you don't do it right away? So there's a machlokas achronim what a person should do. And one last point, number 17, interestingly says she'enu element of rabbanon. He says that this isser is actually an only isser rabbanon. So now let's look at what Dirshu says for this. When does Bal Tashaksu not apply? A person who delays in relieving himself transgresses the prohibition of Bal Tashaksu, performing repulsive acts. The Achronim explain that a person only transgresses by delaying a bona fide need and not by ignoring a passing urge, which he no longer feels when he focuses on another matter. He has, again, diverted his attention. This prohibition is only midrabanan. Therefore, if a person is in a situation where it'll be embarrassing to excuse himself to use the bathroom, for example, he's presenting to a large group of people, he can remain in one place until it is comfortable for him to leave. This is based on the halacha that states that kavod habrius can override a rabbinic prohibition. So the Gemara in Brachos, which talks about the importance of kavod habrius, that's even doichan aseh, but certainly where when it comes to a din d'Rabbanan about the shaksu, we push it off. Okay, Siman Daled Dini Netilas Yadayim Uvoi Chaf Gimel Seifim Yirchatz Yodav Yivarach Al Netilas Yadayim. Sounds simple, but there's a lot to it. So a person should wash their hands and say the bracha Al Netilas Yadayim. The question is why. So let's look in the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says as follows: Yesh al zeh shnei tamim. There's actually two reasons cited here why we wash our hands in the morning. Harash Kasav, the Beinu Asher says, because our hands were touching things in the middle of the night constantly. It's very possible you may have touched part of your body which is usually covered, which is dirty. And that's the reason why we say this before we daven. We wash our hands, we say Al Natil Shadayim. So that's the reason of the rush. The Rashba says, "Lafi shachar achar sheina shebeshachar achar sheina anu nasim kibir chadasha chsiv chadashim b'karim rabbi munasacha." When a person wakes up, it's like they're new. They're completely. Their neshama comes back to them. So therefore, we have to thank Hashem that Hashem has created us to be able to bless Him. Now, that's why we say all the brachos every day, because every day, so I said it yesterday, that every day is kedai for me to say it. So this is also it's interesting. It says before the avoda, that's how the kohanim would prepare. They would wash their hands, they would wash their feet, they would do different forms of preparation of cleanliness, of washing their hands. So that's what we do as well. Fine. So he says, so we actually go strict and hold like both shitas. So we're machmir by both ways. The imul berach al netilas yadayim koydem atfila shuvu yavarach achar tefila kol yalma. Now, question is, what exactly does this mean? Well, it says pretty clearly that a person is supposed to wash their hands and say a bracha before tefillah. But if they didn't, then it seems pretty clear from the Mishnah Berurah that you can no longer say the bracha after tefillah. We'll see a little bit more about that. V'yavarech miyad achar netilah, immediately after you wash, yavarech ve'en tzarich lahamtin ad haniguv. We don't dry our hands. V'gam haniguv einam akev. You actually don't need to dry your hands. Yesh machmir shlo yavarech ad achar shenagiv yadav. Interesting. Some are strict to only make the bracha after your hands are dry. The svirhu de in ruach rot sam yadayim ad achar haniguv. Some say that the ruach ra only leaves after your hands are dry, because they hold that the water on your hands has tumah, has ruach ra. Usvirhu to also varach yadayim shruach ra sharleim. Avadasa paiskim enokain. We don't postulate that. You don't have to dry your hands in order to say on the Netilas Yadayim. Because b'seder HaYomi shel yiga b'mavushav ad sheyidol. A person shouldn't touch clothing until he washes his hands. Isa b'brachos and daf nun alav al tito chalucha shachas miyad hashamish v'tilbash. A person shouldn't take garment before they wash their hands. Mishum sakanas mazikin. You should wash your hands right there. Even if someone else who gave you the water is someone who already washed, still it shouldn't take it. It also says in the Gemara, you should wash your face as well, your feet as well. We don't walk around barefoot in of Shacharis. The Pri Megadim says you don't have to wash your feet because we really don't have that much of an issue because we don't walk around barefoot. Okay. So let's address again the first question that I cited. What is the reason for Netilas Yadayim? So we mentioned there's two reasons: the Rosh and the Rashba. Either it's totally on cleanliness because your hands are touching things, so you have to wash your hands, or it's because of that you have a new neshama. So on this, the Biurim Musafim asks an interesting question. What happens if you're wearing mittens? You go to sleep, it's freezing cold, and you're outside in the tent, and there's no heat, so you're wearing gloves the whole night. So your hands were completely covered. So l'chayra, according to the sheet of the Rosh, you shouldn't have to do on the Netilas Yadayim at all. So he says as follows: Shavadai lo nagba makam atunaf. So he quotes, nonetheless, the Bir Halacha Shulashitas Harash. According to the first shot, Ein Sarachlit al Yada Babayker El Mishum Rachra Ubli Bracha. According to the Rosh, of course, according to the Rosh, he's saying, of course, you have to wash with a bracha. But according to the Rosh, he would say that you would still wash, but you do it without a bracha. Let's say you know for sure your hands are dirty, according to the sheet of the Rosh. You should have to make a bracha every time you daven if you know for sure your hands are dirty. And you should have to make a bracha according to him. Let's say a person goes to the bathroom and he wants to daven afterwards. So he says you don't make a bracha. So again, when it comes to all the other tefillahs, you went to the bathroom and now you want to daven mincha, so you don't have to wash with a bracha. You don't wash with a bracha. He says, so again, according to quoting the Ber Halacha, he writes the Kaimalon Shloi Niskana Netilas Yadayim El B'Shachar Nasa Beria Chadasha. Says that we only wash in mornings because you're a Beria Chadasha. So therefore, we don't require Netilas Yadayim with a bracha at night. Fine. And it says, so let's look at question list first. Let's see how Dirshu writes this up. What is the reason for Netilas Yadayim? Upon arising, a person must wash his hands. There are two reasons for this halacha. The Rosh explains that a person's hands are constantly moving when he is asleep, and they are bound to touch areas which are normally covered. In order to recite Kriya Shema and daven, one must first wash his presumably unclean hands. According to this view, if a person knows that his hands are not clean before Mincha or Mariv, he should wash his hands and recite a bracha. The practical halacha maintains that one should wash without a bracha when it comes to Mincha Mariv. It follows from this opinion that if a person sleeps with gloves on his hands or while completely clothed, he should wash his hands without a bracha. Okay, so again, he only quotes that one sheet, but of course the Rashi doesn't say that. So that last question for today is, can one recite Netilas Yadayim after Shachar. So the Mishnah Berurah clearly seemed to say no. Now look at number 4 by the Bir Musafim. But Talmud Davar Kosav Chayadam Shetfilah Hi B'Makam Carbon. We daven and now without the Beis Hamikdash because there was karbanos before, and because of that, B'Tzarch Adam L'Kadishes Atzma B'Til Shadayim Kikoin Lifnei Ha'avodaso. We're emulating the way of the Kohen before he prepared for the avoda. V'Alkein Lo Nitin L'Hashlim L'Achat Tefillah. There's no reason to do it after davening. Behuva B'Shem Rav Kamenetsky Shle'Achat Tefillah Hainu Achat Tefillah Salachash. It doesn't mean, it means once you have already said the private Shemona Esrei, that's it. At that point, that's over. So, can one read saying the Netilas Yadayim after Shachar? The Rashba explains the reason for the Netilas Yadayim differently. When we wake up, it is if we are created anew. We must offer thanks to Hashem for creating us to serve Him. Chazal therefore instituted the recitation of Berachas HaShachar. Like the Kohen who washed his hands prior to the Avodah, we wash before offering our tefillah. It follows from this opinion that this is only obligated to wash before Shacharis. Washing that takes place after Shacharis, but not right before Mincha or Mariv, is not obligatory according to either view, since one is not washing for a tefillah. Let's see if there's any questions over here. Then we'll stop. What prohibition does one who restrains himself from passing gas transgress? So apparently, so the answer is there's no prohibition at all. It's the whole issue is about the shaksu is dafka when it comes to gedolim, and we also talked about katanim. Let's see, question 12. Until when may one say the bracha of the Netilas Yadayim if he did not say it before davening? So we just quoted, after the sound Shemona Esrei, he may not. Ad kan.